Hey, how you guys doing? Officer J here. Today we're gonna have three more questions that came from you guys in regards to law enforcement and the public. So here we go. So the first question says, "What inspired you to become a police officer and start sharing your experiences on YouTube?" Well, as far as what inspired me to become a police officer, I kind of just fell into it whenever I was in college. I was a political science major. Ended up changing my major to criminal justice. Started seeing things that were going on in the public and just in my environment. And I've always been a fan of, if you want to see change or if you think there is change that needs to be that needs to happen, that you also need to be part of that change. I'm not saying that everybody, if they find a problem with law enforcement or law enforcement community relations, that they need to become a law enforcement, but I felt that my best way of changing, of helping with the change in certain aspects of law enforcement, for me to become a law enforcement officer. And I generally like to deal with people, and sometimes, what's the best way to help somebody is by helping them in some of their most vulnerable moments that we encounter. And the reason why I wanted to start sharing my experiences on YouTube was I get a lot of questions, whether it be in person, text messages, phone calls, Facebook or whatever, email. Mainly Facebook. People send me messages, and I got to the point where I was like, I'm sharing these experiences or answering these questions all the time. So I was like, I might as well put, some of these things on YouTube. That way, if somebody comes across it, they don't. Because sometimes there's people that's afraid to access. Not everybody has access to officers like the people that I know have. Some people don't know officers. Like, they could be from a bigger city where they don't have a cop living next door and they just don't know them. And, they don't want to approach them and ask some of these questions. But I felt that if I can make, a YouTube channel and make some of these videos, share some of my experiences, things that I've been through, answer some questions, then maybe I can touch a few more people than just the people in my immediate reach. Okay. Second question says, how can citizens best cooperate with officers during traffic stops to ensure everyone's safety? Uh, of course, we are talking about if a traffic stop is a good traffic stop, which 98% of them are. Traffic stops are simple. Most of the time, officers don't know who they're stopping. They don't know how many passengers. It's a surprise for you just as much as it's a surprise for them. Let's say speeding, for instance. You get stopped for speeding. They stop you. Really and truly, sometimes they don't even know if it's a male or female, black or white, Asian, or whatever, until they get to the car. So, officer approaches, "Hey, I'm such and such. The reason why I'm stopping you is for X, Y, Z. I need your license, registration, proof of insurance, depending on what your state requires. Provide them with any documentation." Some officers prefer walk-ups to the car. Some agencies require them to call the driver out. Uh, but just to ensure everyone's safety, it's just simple. I know it's simple as saying comply, but just "Hey, officer, this is I'm such and such. Oh, here's everything that you asked for. Whether they give you a ticket or not, you get a ticket." I always tell people all the time, even if you feel the stop wasn't valid, like let's say you wasn't speeding, take the ticket. The ticket is not an admission of guilt. Take it to court. Uh, bring it to the city hall or town hall or to the police department. Contested there. On the side of the roadway is never the time to contest any infractions, even if you feel it's invalid, because this is not a courtroom. If you say, "Hey, look, officer, I wasn't speeding. I have," let's say you have, let's say, GPS or all OnStar or whatever. Just get all that property documentation and bring it with you. You can file a formal complaint later. It's just like I said, the side of the road isn't the place to do it. But that's just to ensure everybody's safety. If you have any weapons in your car legally, I'm not saying that you have to hand it. I'll just let the officer know, "Hey, I have a weapon in my glove compartment." He doesn't have to take it, but it's just letting him know, like, "Hey, do you prefer if I reach for the registration, which is in the glove compartment?" But like I said, it's just letting them know. That way you don't open your glove compartment, the gun just falls out, and now everybody's at unease. So like I said, that's just being open. But yeah, so things of that nature. Like I said, comply, and just like I said, any weapons in the car, just allow them, just let them know. Uh, Next question would be, what proactive steps can communities take to address crime and build trust with local law enforcement? Well, that's a two-way street. It's not just on the community; it's also on the law enforcement officers to reach out to the community and show that they actually care. Uh, but we're gonna focus mainly on this question. So the practice steps that communities can take. Um, it's hard to be. Nobody wants to be what they call like a rat or snitch, but when you see things that are potentially unsafe or things that you know aren't right, you should report it. I mean, I say that all the time. Anything that doesn't seem right to you or doesn't sit well with you, report it, get it checked out. Even if it turns out to be nothing, it's better to be safe than sorry, because there's a lot of times people be like, it's called like the bystander effect, where somebody will say, oh, well, I'm not going to call the cops because somebody else will. And then that person, the person that you think is going to call the cops, they have that same thought about you. So what ends up happening is nobody ends up calling the cops, and then something transpires, and that could have either been stopped, prevented it, or not allowed to get any worse than what it was if somebody would have just took the initiative to call the cops. Uh, and that's just addressing the crime part. As far as the building trust with local law enforcement, uh, is just speak with your officers. I mean, get to know the officers that patrol your community. I'm not saying you guys have to be best friends. Not to say if you're doing a cookout outside, you have to invite them to the cookout, but just know your officers. Just know who's in your area. Know that like, hey, Officer Jay's in my area today, so I know him or whatever. I know. I'm not saying you have to memorize the pattern, but like, just know him, like a little trust. Like wave or whatever. If you can, introduce yourself. Stop me to introduce yourself. I mean, I normally introduce myself when I see new people. I also come from a small town, so if you're not from here, you usually stick out to me, and I'll be like, hey, I don't know you. How you doing? Whatever. I introduce myself, I'll say like how long I've been doing this. That way the public knows who I am. And we have other officers that do it as well, but the public knows who I am. I know who they are. I get to know them, know their family. So like, for instance, like if I'm passing by your house and there's usually, let's say a Dodge Charger or a Camaro and a truck in your driveway, I know what cars is in your driveway. So if I know such and such, you're going on, let's say, a trip or whatever, then all of a sudden there's this weird truck in the middle of the night and they're unloading all your belongings. I'm not gonna say, oh, you're being robbed, but I'm like, that looks a little weird. I might stop by or pass an extra couple times, in a certain period of time, to see if anything sticks out. And if anything sticks out, that's when I'll probably make contact. Like, hey, how y'all doing? Oh, I know the people that live here. And you guys don't look like them. But like I said, that's just building, like I said, a relationship, and that part is not all on the community. That part is on law enforcement too. But you guys keep sending your questions, and we'll get to them.